The other thing was, which we may or may not have touched on a bit, but it kind of relates to another collaborative skills project, and that's the engagement with the media and kind of leveraging or influencing the media as well. So, something that Philip mentioned only quite briefly, I think, but it's how the research that we do changes the way that the media generally respond to research activities in universities, and also those kind of contacts or partnerships with libraries, archives, museums. The other thing was, well, two things really. One was the sense of our kind of emotional response to the research that we do. And I found it quite interesting, the suggestion perhaps that our tendency to be quite critical extends to ourselves, and that tendency to be critical, which is an important part of academic practice, can also reduce confidence in the kind of work that we do as well. And I was actually very pleased to hear that said by somebody who knows about the kinds of activities that are going on, how researchers sell themselves. So that was intriguing. The other thing was the relation of the arts and humanities to STEM, to science, technology, and subjects which have traditionally been seen as quite a positive force of engaging, mobilising public engagement activities. But it seems that arts and humanities researchers are actually very good at doing that themselves. And they seem to be, the statistics that were presented seem to show that we can make an impact and we can make a difference that way. And using archival resources seems to be a way of actually empowering communities and kind of building those connections, which was fantastic. So I'm going to scroll up, or I suppose forward in time a little bit. Here, gosh, damn it, you always tweeting things. But we've got some photos of hopefully happy people in the OU in Camden. I've got to say thank you to the Open University for their hosting of the event yesterday. And having a look again at some of the photos that we've got of the start. That's Philip's session. The other thing, I'm going to pick up on Stephanie, I'm not going to embarrass you too much, I'm going to pick up on your tweet here, which was about how can we make research relevant to wider audiences, and it was something that came up in some of the discussions. And I think that sense of a hook or kind of relevancy to communities, and particularly when it comes to archival materials, is absolutely crucial. And I'm just wondering whether any of you have been thinking how you might do that. I suppose it connects with the idea of confidence in the research project as well. But do you feel more confident that there is a kind of sense of relevance or connection with your research, or is that something that you're still working through?
So there were two things that I sort of, one of them is what Philip said about connections with the BBC, and I mean that's something certainly I'm going to try and follow up, because I think my particular topic would work. And also talking to, I was in one of Richard Kelly's workshops, and similarly, you know, he was giving suggestions about how to write, I mean, well, you know, the need to make choices about how you write your material and what you do with it, but also, you know, that also is a, you know, ways of taking that forward in terms of how you write, certainly history, for example, was one of the aspects. So those were two areas that I was sort of, you know, I will take away, certainly, and take further.
Anyone else like to share that? Yeah.
I think, I take that point very much, Mary. I think before you get to that point, though, Fiona Courage raised a very interesting point of defining your audience, you know, having an idea of who you actually want to connect your research with, you know, what impact you want to make, and kind of refine it that way. And then you know, that as the first stage of a process toward thinking, well, what activities could I then think about or produce or organise that would then exploit that or speak to them. more clearly.
Yeah, great, thank you. I mean, that point about bringing the audience to the fore, in a sense, is understanding of it is absolutely central. Anybody else?
I would just say I'm going to stop trying to force the relevance, I think. Because always for years I've been thinking, how am I going to make this relevant? How am I going to, what hook do I need? And I think, well, actually, maybe it's just interesting. You know what I mean? It's like maybe if I'm interested in it, maybe I'll just be able to communicate that. Then let people make their own decisions about whether it's interesting, rather than saying this is interesting because you need to, just relax about it a bit.
Yeah, I think that is really quite important because I think there is this minority complex that the arts have, always tagging along with the sciences. I mean, I feel sometimes I feel it kind of twice because the film studies also kind of have this minority complex tagging along with the more established, literary studies and so on, and kind of we're constantly being told you have to be relevant, you have to be, reach out to, and you have to make impact, and and everything like that. And maybe that's a bit of a myth that we should just kind of need to let go or something. I mean, I really think of it a bit as like a minority complex of people kind of trying to force, this being relevant when maybe it's actually, it will come with itself maybe.
Yeah, and maybe in 200 years.
Yeah, exactly.
The question is being relevant to what? Yeah.
Being relevant to you, to which audiences. I mean, it's to identifying your audiences here.
But also research is about bringing new aspects. So new aspects, it's difficult to define them to something relevant. I mean, it's something new. You see, I like much more this interesting idea rather than defining something to relevance. Because like that I think it's a bit restricted, there is a restriction. Does it make sense?
There was, sorry, I'll take the question here as well, actually.
I was just going to say, kind of on the same lines as what kind of everyone's been saying. I think that talking about public engagement and relevance and interdisciplinarity and all these kind of things, you do run the risk of kind of implying that, work that is intended for an academic audience is meaningless now. It's kind of this whole trying to force, I think my work is quite a public project, but I'm going to be quite happy if just sociologists and archival scientists read it. Kind of this,
I just thought of Ferguson's horrendously embarrassing killer apps. That, if anyone knows about that, how the West beat the rest was the tagline for his book on Empire. I don't know if it was just called Empire, I can't remember. But anyway, he decided that the West beat the rest through 6 what he decided to call killer apps.
That's because he's hit with the kids.
Exactly, it's just embarrassing. So I think you can push it too far.
Brings up a point, like we want to go beyond our discipline, but we don't want to lose our audience for our discipline.
Or our credibility in that concept.
Or in this case, lose our language. I think in a piece in the London Review of Books, maybe last month, about the changes in higher education, particularly the funding. I can't remember the author. It was really quite good, and he said, and one of the things that he mentioned is that so much of the stuff that goes into REF and all these other things is a case where the humanities and other departments and just academia in general are losing the battle of language between business, and that we're kind of forcing ourselves to talk about what we do in terms that are sort of alien to us, like impact and and it will change the way we think about ourselves and our practices. So.
Also kind of just kind of chip in a minute. I think that also if you look at kind of overall rep scores, I think impact case studies account only for about 10%. So I sometimes think that the amount of excitement and the amount of sometimes obsession that's been generated by the concept of impact isn't really proportionate to how it's weighted.
The impact of impact.
Yeah, disproportionate impact.
And it would be raised. They say it will be raised to 40%.
Yes. That was, we were at, if that was the talk we were at, they think the next record will be...
Oh, the next record will be
higher.
It will be
But
higher.
no one knows, but that's what...
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what people are expecting.
What's the perceived impact of future?
I was going to say something about defining terms as well. I suppose probably people touched on this already, but actually, that maybe one of our responsibility is about defining, that when we talk about things like impact, it's about a model and about a kind of model that's already been set in place, and maybe we do still have a responsibility of having a kind of voice and having a kind of being able to define certain terms of our engagement. Maybe we should be a bit more confident in that.
Well, maybe it's about defining it on our terms, because it was interesting that Philip couldn't really define what he meant by impact when I suggested their morning. And therefore, okay, so if the HRC don't have a really clear idea about it, then it's up to us to grab it and say, well, actually, this is what we think impact means.
We're just being in general, a better advocate for ourselves.
Yeah.
To the point where we're not doing it in, where we don't feel besieged. And that we have to defend ourselves in a terminology that's not really even our own. But
Well, no, exactly. So make it your own by defining it on our own terms, rather than in terms of something that, as you say, in a way is alien and skews the way in which practice happens, because departments get so completely illustrated about whether they're ticking the right boxes for these terms that nobody really knows what they mean.
You can see that. You can see that in the diverse ways in which things are assessed. This field is very different in different places. So in a way, it's kind of, you're setting the kind of parameters and the way in which it's measured as you go. So I think this is quite new still. If arts and humanities are kind of feeling their way what it actually is impact. Work in progress.
If I could just pick up on a little bit, perhaps move forward to, or through time, Twitter time, to Sinead's paper at the end of yesterday, because I found it very interesting what she was saying initially about the problems of communication when you're working in large groups. And of course she comes from a software engineering background, if I remember. So, and it's a case of when you're working with other people and you're in a meeting where they use acronyms or they use terms, and every single person at that table actually means a different thing. By those terms, or understands a different thing, or indeed doesn't understand them at all, as happens in some of the meetings I go to. It's always a challenge of trying to the sort of definitions that you're talking about in the profession that you're operating, or the kind of practices that you're operating in. But that was when you're working in massive projects, large archival projects, the kinds of the scales that Sinead was talking about, that presents a real problem if people don't actually understand what they mean, or what their key point is. So I thought that was something perhaps to take away from this weekend as well, is that there's a certain amount of education that we need to do about perhaps learning to speak other languages, and not literally other languages, but means of, but certainly the kinds of languages used by different professions. And I think that also came through a bit with Naomi's session today, is that from a legal perspective, and from those working within copyright and intellectual property, there are again different professional emphases and different terms used. The other thing that got me was the kind of requirements gathering concept from Sinead, and that kind of ties a little bit on with the public engagement idea of understanding the audience as well, because it's what she seems to be saying there is that developing a tool that is actually going to be used for a specific purpose, rather than trying to tell an institution how they should be doing their job. And I think as researchers, we'll inevitably need to interact more and more with institutions, be they archives or the universities or other non-HEO partners, that respecting each other's professional boundaries or professional expertise perhaps is going to be crucial there. So actually understanding that we where the expertise lies for different groups and learning from that. The other thing was not that, as it perhaps ties in a little bit with the illusion of digital information, or the faith that we place in it, that if we just put stuff out there and we can just search it and we'll find things. One of the things that Sinead was saying, and that this comes up with the idea of metadata and the way that we encode that information, is it's absolutely central to smart searching, to actually finding some meaningful, usable results. Otherwise, it just sits there in a sea of endless results that are generated by interrogating a database. So thinking very carefully about how we, again, the end users that we have, what kind of information is required, I think was absolutely crucial. So, again, I'm going to zoom forward towards today, I think, unless there were any kind of drunken tweets last night. Some was up early. Later this morning, okay. This was an interesting point. I think a lot of people were quite struck by this. Was the great graph that Naomi had on the screen of the speed of technological change versus the speed of legislative change, and that kind of gap in between. And it was, I think, a really exciting morning spent exploring that gap, and how we're constantly sort of playing catch up. So it is very much an experience for researchers today, and also institutions, that we are trying to adapt and use tools and materials to improve access to sort of improve perhaps think about the preservation of materials, but we also have to be deeply cautious about how we do it, because actually in some ways it's retrospectively legislating for practices that have been going on for a number of years, or in this case probably a number of years. So I just want to
be as well.
Sorry.
Practices that may have ceased to be and superseded by.
Indeed, yeah. How did you feel about the copyright? Not to some, because this is still being streamed, I'm assuming. So, but not to put anybody on the spot. How did you feel about the addressing of copyright today? Was it a surprise, a shock?
I think, Matthew, if you scroll up, Scott has a very nice tweet that was retweeted. Just do that.
Move past that one.
Right? But if you go, no, he's got another one.
No dinosaurs this time.
No obscene dinosaurs.
Is that Emily?
Yeah.
I think it was retweeted. No, maybe not.
Okay.
Scott's one is that one.
So we have a look at Scott.
Is it that one?
Yeah, that's Scott's one's there.
There was another one.
Right. So
But I think it was something to the effect that he felt simultaneously more. Scott, can you help me out here?
I think what I did was, so I posted that one, and then I think Kate favorited it, and I think I retweeted Kate's favorite.
Okay.
As and I said along with that, I said, I was thankful for the copyright presentation this morning, mainly because it's daunting, but it's good to know. I mean, obviously, and especially as someone fairly early in research, the earlier you know about it, the more. One of the things that I thought was really instrumental that she did was told you to build in time into your action plan or whatever to address these issues of copyright before it's too late. And somebody I was talking to later today, I forget, was saying that she has a book. It was you that has a book out, and it's kind of now, while this book is like sort of sitting there waiting to be kind of graced with the publisher, like you're having to sort of go back and retrace your steps in order to address like really thorny issues of copyright. So it's one of those things that the sooner you know, the more you can kind of do it as you go. But yeah, I mean, daunting, but really valuable. So.
And it's made me think about passing on that knowledge as well. If and when I come to supervise something, it'll be one of the first things I'll bring up as soon as they want to do archival work.
And to be fair, I think last term you mentioned something like that to me up at UVA in one of our other trainings. So
Sorry.
No, so that was good. I mean, I got it even earlier than today. But
I mean, it's interesting actually that I was speaking to Philip yesterday, and I've got to say, when I was a PhD student, I finished in 2009 and started 2005. So, and back in 2005, we'd only been a few years it's only been a few years since the Roberts report in kind of skills agenda hit the headlines for postgraduate research, so personal and professional development. And in 2005, although a lot of people in the institution were taking it very, very seriously, because of course this was now a recommendation, there was funding supporting this initiative, to getting people thinking about what skills they need and what knowledge they need, not just to do their research project, but to do more with their research project and do it effectively. Actually the kind of engagement for me as a then PGR student, postgraduate research student, and also for many of the people that I was with, was a kind of disconnect really. We didn't quite understand why it is we needed to know these things that people were telling us we needed to know. Whereas now, I find that 2013, people are already engaging, are already switched onto those notions before they step into the university. And I think largely, Philip asked me why that was the case, and I wanted to say it's because we're so cool at training. We're so good. But it wasn't really that actually, although that might be it. But actually, I think it's emulation. I think it's people setting very good examples, and as you were saying quite rightly, that one of the things that this experience might give you the ability to do is actually to pass that knowledge on and to support students who are being supervised by you. I've seen over the last few years that kind of shift towards a better understanding of the kinds of professional practices and responsibility, and not to quote too much on the power and responsibility things we had yesterday, but there is a sense that we are that there is already that shift in mentality, and that's a really positive thing. So, did anyone have any final points about the workshops this afternoon? I'm sorry I wasn't in all of the workshops. I couldn't be in all the different rooms at once. So if anyone would like to feed in any comments or recommendations or whatever you like particularly from the workshops today, shall we open it out to a more general discussion in the last 5 minutes?
Yeah,
or so?
sure. That would be yeah. Or if you don't want to say it out loud, put it on your form. And there's a little section where you can write something, and that would be brilliant as well. Just kind of any feedback on things that work.
Can we still email you as well if we come up with stuff later when we've sort of the dust is settled?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the thing for the website, and
if you thought of it, other people will think.
Yeah.
So that's it. So you've all got your groups on there. It'd be nice to see some feedback in those groups as well.
Can we have them open Josh as well?
Yeah.
Because we're sort of just in a group. Yes. Can you make a general for it?
Yeah, we can do that. I didn't open them up before because we just didn't want people to get confused about But yeah, we'll open it all up, and Josh will do it. I say we. I don't actually do it. Yeah. Josh will do it. And also a lot, resources will be going up, and links, and a lot of the stuff that's mentioned. I'm going to get off all the different presenters, and that's all going to be there. And as I've said to some people, we are hoping to continue this and perhaps do it again. So any feedback that you have as the guinea pigs for this project would be really, really helpful. If there's as much positive as things that we can improve would be brilliant.
And even if the same cohort wants a follow-up session, if there are sort of areas that have been raised that we haven't really addressed, put them on there maybe.
Yeah, other workshops that we could do that we hadn't thought of.
And how we could build on what you've learned, hopefully.
Yeah.
In terms of opening it up, could people outside of this group access the website? Maybe not necessarily. Would they have any access to it?
Yeah, they're going to have access to the resources and things, not to the groups and to personal information about all of you, but to some of the resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the kind of idea for the future of mentoring? How is that going? And have you got an idea of how that's going to work? Are we going to, there's something Ellen was mentioning about, mentors, or if we are allocated and how that will?
Well, the project is going to run until May of next year, and all of the workshop leaders, kind of are on board for you getting in contact with them. But I think that as we've kind of made the introductions over the last couple of days, it's very much kind of how much effort you put into following it up is going to kind of have an influence on how much you get back. Like they won't be contacting you, but they know that you'll be contacting them.
Obviously, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Richard was saying to me that actually for him, he's given people in the sessions like his personal email, and you can get that online, and he'd prefer people to email him just because it's easier for him. So, and possibly other session leaders have said that as well, but all of them that I've spoken to seem very open for people getting in touch and having an email correspondence, and that's what we wanted to set up really as a really important part of the project, because you can't cover that much in an hour and a half workshop, and people's projects develop and change, and your questions in May may be very different to your questions now, so yeah.
I think if there's no further
There's a nice coincidence, the encouraging coincidence, that the 27th of October is the date of the first tweet.
Yeah.
The UNESCO Day for preservation of the audiovisual heritage.
Oh.
So maybe.
I've got 11 new ones here.
Yeah, we've all been.
Yeah, apparently I ended up on the BBC News the other night, and I'm probably going out to the world again, but I still haven't seen it myself. I got these text messages saying, I saw you on the news last night. Yeah. But anyway, I would formally like to thank all of you for being here today. It's an amazing event, and it's always enriching to meet people with different backgrounds and different ideas. But I'd also like to really thank Barbara, Dermot, Kate, Steph and Josh, who have been working away on this project for, a year and a half?
June 2012 was the beginning.
Yeah, a long time, right from the sort of bidding stage right through to delivery, and putting together all these fantastic resources and getting things organised with minimal work from me.
That's not true.
Yeah,
Matthew.
Matthew.
Thanked as well. Matthew has been incredibly supportive since we first decided this is what we wanted to do. We've had great guidance at the so we want to formally thank you for that, actually.
Yes.
It's not minimal, it's hugely appreciated. We couldn't do it without you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.